So what's going on here? Standing by to weigh in is someone who understands what's going on. She's based in Austin, Texas. Texas, of course, is the epicenter of what has been occurring on the southern border for the last 2 or 3 years. And Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch is also the co-host of a podcast, Law Moms Out Loud, and a YouTube page devoted to helping female lawyers who want to have a successful career and home life. And we've had Kate on the show before. It's great to have her back. And Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, how are you on this glorious Tuesday?
Hi there. Good morning. I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me on.
I'm glad you're back here with us. Do you believe this? This number has dropped by 50% since the end of Title 42. Do you think that's a true number, or is that just the government playing with us?
Yeah, no, I'm not surprised by that, because I think what happened during Title 42 is that the border was essentially closed completely to asylum seekers. There was no way for them to legally seek asylum in the United States. When Title 42 ended, these hopeful migrants are now given some opportunities to be able to apply for asylum. Now, that's a complex situation, and we can talk through that. But I think that this shows us that when we have an orderly mechanism for processing asylum seekers, that it calms the chaos at the border, which is somewhat counterintuitive, but I am not surprised at all by these numbers.
Okay, so as I understand it, this new rule, I forget what title number, there's so many damn titles out there right now, but most migrants are presumed ineligible for asylum in this country, in the United States, if they went through another country to get to the border and didn't first seek refuge in that country. In other words, somebody, for example, from, let's just say, Colombia, didn't first seek asylum in Mexico before they entered the United States. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's one of the provisions of Biden's new border law, and that is probably the provision that will be enjoined or paused in federal court, because it's in direct contradiction to our longstanding asylum laws. But there are some other complexities about his policy that do allow for asylum eligibility, or at least to be able to apply for asylum, if people register through the CBP1 app, and get invited to come in and apply. They can be, they can access some exceptions to this rule of applying at every country through which they pass. So this is what I mean, that there are mechanisms now in place for at least some of these individuals to apply for asylum. And when that's given as an option to someone, in my experience working with these migrants, they're going to take that route of, trying to register for the app or trying to line up at the bridge if they're having technical issues with the app, as opposed to crossing without permission. That's sort of a last-ditch effort.
I saw today, it was, I don't know, it probably was Fox. They seem to be the only ones covering this story with any great aplomb over the last couple of years, but that app has got some problems. Technically, there's some problems with that. And, it made it sound like a lot of people are just saying, well, the heck with that. I'm just going to go ahead and find a soft spot on the border and just get in the country.
Well, there definitely are lots of glitches with the app. Everyone is reporting that. And there are ways that people can line up at the bridge and show that they're having technical issues with the app. And in some cases, they can get around that. And we've seen those lines are very long. But yeah, this is one of the issues with the new policy. And I think the reality of the situation is that when we have all of these little issues with border policy stuff, like this transit ban, like this CBP1 app and the glitches, like this constant shifting of policies. We can imagine for ourselves how difficult it is to stay up to date on what's actually happening. Imagine that you're, a homeless migrant with little access to the news. They really don't know what's going on. So in my perspective, having done this, work for over a decade now, the best thing we can do is to have just a standard orderly mechanism to allow asylum seekers to apply and be screened, and to stop messing with it so much, because each of these moments that we tinker creates more chaos and confusion. It doesn't work in the way that I think we want it to.
Have we ever had that, Kate? Maybe at Ellis Island 150 years ago, but have we ever really had that, what you're talking about?
Well, in the last 20 years, up to Title 42, what we had in place was a mechanism for asylum seekers could come to the border and they could say, I'm afraid of returning to my country, and they'd have to go through a credible fear interview. And if they didn't qualify, they'd get deported at that moment. And if they did qualify, they'd be processed in and they'd prepare for a final asylum hearing before an immigration judge. And that system was functioning. Now, were there imperfections and things, to be done about that, like providing more access to immigration judges and asylum officers, et cetera? Yes, of course. However, that was a functioning system for about 2 decades. And then we get to Title 42 when everything shuts off. And that's honestly what has put us in the position that we're in today. This 3-year backlog of not having processed any asylum seekers is what has created the problems that we're seeing right now.
But in truth, it's been a reluctance for both the Democrats and the Republicans to deal with this on a long-term basis. I mean, yeah, you mentioned what it was like 15 years ago and then what happened in the wake of Title 42. But it seems to me that we've been kicking this can down the road for so long, we don't even know where the can came from. The real issue is in Congress, right?
100% agree. We haven't had, meaningful immigration reform for 40 years, really since 1986. And what we honestly need in this country is Congress to get together and pass a law that represents the needs of this economy. Because the truth is we have an aging population. We have a need for immigrant labor. I mean, asylum along the border is just a sliver of what we need Congress to address. And until they are willing to go into this hot button issue and actually do something about it, we're going to continue to see policy made in the way it has been over these last few years, which is that the president tries to do something and then they get sued, and then the courts either enjoin the program or they don't. I mean, this is the era that we're in of immigration policy making, and it is not working for us, and it all rolls back to Congress to fix this for us.
Well, yeah, I mean, Biden is it's a sue-arama with him right now, and you're getting it from all sides, the ACLU, states, and whatnot. You mentioned something that's interesting there. We have an aging population and a need for immigrant workers. Okay, understand that. What I don't understand is if you have immigrants that are in this country illegally, which there are a lot. I mean, Kate, you have to know that. They're all over. How are they going to get hired legally to work legally in this country? Are we just going to have Amnesty Day? How is that going to happen?
Well, I think that's a portion of a comprehensive immigration laws is the question of the undocumented population that we have here in the United States and figuring out a way for these people to be able to come out of the shadows, maybe to pay a fine and to be able to get work permits. I mean, that benefits everyone, frankly. And the reality is that it would not be, even if you take away the humanitarian question of this population, it would be economically disastrous for us as a nation to even try to, detain or deport this population. That wouldn't make any sense. So yes, of course we need to manage that. But the question is, looking forward, the way that we resolve this is that we provide an immigration system that actually gives immigrants the way to come here legally and work the jobs that we have available to them, which are many. And what we don't have is a system that provides that for temporary or long-term workers. And we're going to keep seeing what we're seeing in the meantime, which is workers coming to fill the jobs that we have, whether or not the immigration system gives them a legal way to do that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on the basic logistics of what you just said. Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch, she's the owner and CEO of Lincoln-Goldfinch Law, and she's on the ground in Austin, Texas. Here's what I hear a lot, and this is anecdotal. It certainly isn't backed up. I don't have reams of research in front of me or anything like that. But the problem I think that a lot of people that I hear have is that there are people in this country and we don't know who they are. They haven't been vetted. What is their purpose? And toward the end of Title 42, as people were entering this country through the southern border at the gates or coming across the river to soft points in the security system or whatever it may be, it wasn't just people from South American countries. It was people from all over the world, including Afghans, including Chinese, native Chinese. I'm just wondering, these people have been turned loose inside this country or they've scattered. How do we know who's here, why they're here? I mean, I understand about looking forward. We have to look back on that as well. I mean, we may have set ourselves up for some very serious problems in this country. I know if you could solve that problem, you would be in Washington, D.C. at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But how do we solve it? How do we begin to address it?
Well, I think this is why we need lots of resources to conduct these credible fear interviews. Those are interviews that happen at the border with asylum seekers, and these are trained officers who know exactly how to conduct an interview with an applicant. They know what's going on in these countries around the globe. They know if someone says they're part of the, XYZ tribe in Somalia, what follow-up questions to ask to determine if this person is telling a real story, right? So that's what we need to do, is do this, screening along the border, and then also understand that when someone comes in, they've made it through this screening, and they're preparing for this hearing before a judge, and I represent clients in these hearings. So what I can tell you about them is they're very extensive. We submit hundreds of pages of evidence, expert witness and testimony. Our clients are cross-examined by a Department of Homeland Security officer. I mean, these are intense trials that they go through. And while they're awaiting that trial, they're checking in with an ICE officer. They're being monitored. So all of this, of course, the United States has thought through this problem of making sure that we're letting in asylum seekers who are, actual asylum seekers. And all of that, I think, argues for more resources toward screening at the border, which is, I think, important to mention, because we focus a lot on law enforcement and border enforcement. But this other sort of judicial needs and resources are a really critical piece of doing this right.
Well, I hope the numbers continue in the direction they're going. Do you anticipate those numbers to be down, even from the 4,200 that occurred on Saturday?
Yeah, I think what we're going to go into now is what we saw in the past, which is where we have fluctuations of migrant populations based on seasons and based on what's going on around the globe. So something may happen in, Haiti, and we see a group of people coming in from Haiti, and something may happen in Cuba, and we see a group of people from Cuba. So that's going to just continue, and I think so we'll see fluctuations in the numbers, but we're past Title 42 now, and it's going to be up to the Biden administration, the courts, and hopefully ultimately Congress to just create a steady, routine, systematic process for southern border policy as it pertains to asylum seekers.
Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch. By the way, where can we find Law Moms Out Loud? Is that up there? Where can people find that podcast?
Sure, yeah, we're all over the socials: Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Google, all that.
you got all the YouTubes and the Googles. Okay, and
that's right.
All right. How often do you update that show, Kate?
Well, we do shows periodically. Lately, we've been leading a bunch of events for lawyer moms and doing trainings for lawyers. So we're sort of, spanning out and doing all sorts of fun stuff these days.
Well, as my two kids tell me all the time, you can't have enough lawyers. They're both lawyers. Can't have enough lawyers in this world, Dad. Okay, thank you. I should have named one of them litigation. Kate, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.